DOGE. These are not federal employees.
Right.
Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, they're not going to become federal employees, but they're going to oversee what they're saying is the most transformative effort ever to shrink government, to do to the federal government what Elon did to Twitter.
I hope so.
How will that work?
I think they're going to run most of it through OMB.
Right.
Right. They're going to run it through Russ and his team and advise strategies, plans. I'll be completely honest. When they say we're going to declare victory and say we're done in 18 months and July 4th of 2026, that's insane.
Good to have a deadline, though.
It's nice to have a deadline. It's also an insane one.
Why?
The administrative state started 112 years ago. It has been building. It has got so many reinforcing loops inside of this massive Leviathan. You're not going to absolutely first of all, I don't think you can get the fundamental question answered about does the head of the executive branch get to hire and fire whoever he wants to in 18 months. I think it'll probably be 2 years. I've actually talked with Sean Davis, who's a good buddy. He's like, dude, I think you're lucky if it's answered in 2 years. I think there's some fundamental questions and things that have to be answered and done that are going to take some time. I don't think you can declare victory in 18 months. This has been 100 plus years in the making. And there are so many people with so many vested interests in the status quo. Various people in government, outside of government, the entire system, they're going to fight tooth and nail to make sure that this system of government does not go away. So you're going to be up against, I think we're going to be involved. If Donald Trump goes down the path of I'm going to destroy the administrative state, it could be that the previous 9 years of the craziness that we have seen as a warm-up act for maybe one of the coldest political wars we'll see in DC ever. Because of what's at stake. I mean, you're talking about regime change politics here. Where, two very different governing philosophies of how you approach government on a whole host of fronts, from basic human rights to how government actually operates. And there are a lot of people with vested interest in maintaining the status quo of the administrative state. And they're going to fight tooth and nail to make sure that it doesn't go away. So I think in some ways, I love the fact that he has put brilliant minds like Elon and Vivek to do this with an outsider's approach. I just don't think it's going to happen. I don't think meaningful, fundamental change that is long-term and lasting is going to take place in 18 months. I'm being realistic, having been in DC for 25 years.
Well, 2024 was a wild year. Who knows what 2025 will bring? But one thing a lot of people have realized is that, remember thoughts and prayers? People made fun of that. No one makes fun of that anymore. Prayer actually works. It's just a fact. Every society has recognized that from the beginning of time until recently. And people are starting to realize, oh, wait, prayer is essential every day. So if you want to start something new that's good for your soul, easy to maintain, and will last for the rest of your life, check out Hallow. It is the world's #1 prayer app. I heard about it from my wife, not just once, but every night at dinner for the past 6 months. She loves it because it's easy to use and it is life-changing. It builds a daily habit of prayer and allows you bit by bit to grow closer to God every day of 2025. There are over 10,000 guided prayers and meditations on Hallow. You can check out the daily scripture readings, nightly sleep prayers, and a daily minute if you're short on time. There is all kinds of stuff on Hallow, all designed to get you to grow closer to God. So start the year off right by putting your relationship with God first and pray with the help of Hallow. You get 3 free months of Hallow when you sign up at hallow.com/Tucker. That's hallow.com/Tucker. That is sincerely endorsed from personal experience. They've both of them, as you said, are smart and capable.
Yep.
Very smart, very capable.
Generational.
Yes.
Talent.
And both have put their prestige on the line.
Yep.
So they're highly motivated to show results by July 4th, 2026.
Yeah, but I don't want cheap victories. I don't want them to go, we've cut, first of all, it'd be great if they cut X number of dollars of spending and cut X, hundreds or thousands of regulations. Wonderful, wonderful victories. Again, those are the effects. The cause is the state. All of this stuff that we see in the out-of-control spending, the out-of-control growth of government, all of these things are because of the administrative state. It's in the DNA of it.
Right.
No, the progressives who founded the administrative state viewed the state as salvation. Salvation was to come into every aspect of your life.
It exists for its own benefit, and it grows.
But it's in the DNA.
Exactly.
The DNA of the administrative state is perpetual growth. So if it continues to grow and you're just trimming right here and like, oh, we declared victory, it'll continue, it'll grow right back. You have to cut down the tree. The branches will keep growing. So I don't want them to just trim branches. I need them to tear up by root the administrative state so that it doesn't return and continue to grow.
A quick way to pair it I think, pretty significantly would be to cancel the security clearances of the contractors who work, because the federal government is, its employees are just a percentage of its overall workforce. A lot of them are contractors.
Last statistics I saw, there are about twice as many federal contractors as there are federal employees.
Exactly. And a huge all of the contractors attached to the national security state, which comprises the entire economy of, say, Northern Virginia.
Right. Where I'm from.
Where you're from.
Yes.
Exactly. These are the richest zip codes in the country because they're all federal contractors, and you could end their employment tomorrow by canceling their security clearances. I mean, that they can't work there without security clearance. They can't enter the building.
I am for all of the above in whatever approach it takes in the short term to stop the madness. I talk about this a little bit in the book, where you've got system dynamics, and inside of this massive sprawling system, you've got these reinforcing loops that continue to grow and compound. It's almost like compounding interest, and then just explode in size and strength. Yeah, I think you've got to start stopping these little reinforcing loops, like revoking security clearances. So I think there's a whole variety of approaches.
Talking about your book, American Leviathan.
American Leviathan.
Leviathan's a sea monster.
It is, but also the second definition is a massive sprawling bureaucracy that borders on totalitarian.
Yes, but the Leviathan is described in, I think, the Old
Job and Isaiah.
Right.
Yeah.
In the Old Testament, yes, as some sort of not quite defined but terrifying sea monster.
Yeah, quasi demonic sea monster that God eventually conquers, that Yahweh eventually conquers. But the second definition is definitely about a massive sprawling bureaucracy that tends to be authoritarian and totalitarian. And that's what we have. I mean, this is the one thing that it kind of started dawning on me years ago. Like, there's a serious problem with how DC operates. I mean, I was at the White House, George W. Bush, don't hate me for this. I wrote for him, which was a really interesting experience. You know, whenever you get to write for a president, he's signing your stuff, that's awesome. While my dad was in the House voting against all of his major pieces of legislation.
Yeah.
Which was pretty, when you're young and you go to DC and you're kind of new to it, you think all Republicans are created equal. All the red guys are good guys and all the blue guys are bad guys. And then you start to realize, like I said earlier, not all Republicans are created equal. There's definitely like different shades along the way. And I remember my dad having to take some pretty strong stances in the House and voting against a lot of these major initiatives from George W. Bush because he strongly believed they were not conservative at all in the least bit. In fact, one of the biggest ones was Medicare Part D. This is my dad is...
The prescription drug benefit.
Yes, the prescription drug benefit. I think it was 2003, right before the 2004 election. They really wanted it because they felt that it would help with the senior vote. And there were about 24... about 24 holdouts in the House and the Republican caucus that said, we're not going to vote for this. We're just not going to. They brought him down to the White House. They had Dick Cheney and all the senior White House staff kind of have a little chit chat with them. They all came back and said, we're still not voting for this. And then Bush was overseas and started lobbying them directly. And I remember him calling my dad and saying, I really need this vote. And my dad was like, you're doing a great job representing us overseas, sir. Jim, I really need this vote. I'm not giving you this vote. Click. That was it. That was the end of the conversation. And yeah, my dad... fighting tooth and nail to try and prevent that from passing. It actually passed by one vote because they kept the House floor open for an additional, I don't know how many hours, and eventually got someone to switch their vote in the 3 a.m., 4 a.m. hour. This
was a Karl Rove project.
It was. Yeah. You realize compassionate conservatism is just another name for big government. And this is the other thing too. I make this point.
Remember when people treated Karl Rove like a genius?
Yes. The thing that...
How low are your standards of Karl's a genius?
The thing that Donald Trump, again, and why he's viewed as such an existential threat by permanent DC is he rejects the premise.
Yeah.
Nixon and Reagan rejected the premise that the administrative state was legitimate. And I think actually Watergate is really more a story of that than anything else. I mean, when you go back and look at the story of Watergate, Richard Nixon had just won 520 electoral votes.
Biggest victory in American history.
49 states, won by 20 million votes in the popular vote. It was massive. And he talked very clearly about what he intended to do in a second term in restructuring and dismantling the administrative state. And then lo and behold, Watergate happens, and there's a lot of questions about what actually went down.
Not questions, there are answers. The deputy director of the FBI was
Mark Feld.
Deep Throat.
Yeah, Mark Feld goes to his corporate propagandists, Woodward and Bernstein.
And Woodward was a former naval intel officer.
And uses them as the mouthpiece to then take out the duly elected president of the United States, who was an existential threat to the administrative state.
It was
flip side of the coin, Russiagate.
Yeah.
Same thing. Because the first Republican president since Reagan to reject the premise that the administrative state is legitimate was Donald Trump. Yeah. George H.W. Bush were like, we're okay with it as long as we get to run it. And this is what always worries me a little bit about Republicans who like, well, it's okay as long as we're running it. No, it's a poisonous tree with poisonous fruit.
Can I say...
You cannot reform it.
Richard Nixon should have held I mean, he was an institutionalist in a lot of ways. Nixon, he was like too responsible for his own good. But if he had just held a primetime news conference live and said, let me tell you what's actually going on here. CIA and FBI have colluded to kick me out because I'm a threat to permanent Washington institutional power. And that's just a fact. And here are some details that you might like to know. You know, that 5 out of 6 of the Watergate burglars were actually CIA employees. Like,
yeah, exactly.
And the guy, this reporter from the Washington Post, who's actually worked in the White House. He was sent over by the Pentagon to work in the White House as a naval intel officer 2 years ago. This guy's not a reporter. Bob Woodward's not a reporter.
When you look back,
it's also fake.
Yeah, when you look back,
why didn't Nixon do that?
I don't know, but that shows you who Donald Trump is as a person.
Right. No, you're right.
I mean, Nixon could have done that.
Yeah,
he didn't. Donald Trump basically has.
No, he has.
No. That's not the truth of what's taking place.
You're right. You're totally.
And he stood up and he said, "This is completely politically motivated. They're trying to take me out because I'm a threat to them."
That's such a smart description of the difference between Donald Trump and Richard Nixon, is that Trump said aloud what was actually happening. And I think that's why they tried to assassinate him in Butler, Pennsylvania, among other places. So thank you for that. Let me ask about something you alluded to, which is law.
Can I say something really quick, though?
Of course, please.
The amount of courage that it simply took to say something out loud that people would consider verboten.
Yeah.
That's part of Donald Trump's great power. He'll say stuff out loud that people, you shouldn't say that. Or you can't be saying that. But he needs to say it, and he should say it. Because of situations like this, where he has the ability to say it. And sometimes, he says things that, maybe are not the most helpful, but a lot of times he says things out loud that in the past people would have said, you can't say that.
But it does raise the question, like, why can't you? Like,
I know, why can't you?
Why has no one else said that?
Right.
And why has no one ever explained what the UFO program is about? Or
why
who killed Kennedy? Or what happened on 9/11? Like, just the obvious things. Why is no other president, not that Trump has revealed the truth about any of those things, but
hopefully someday, soon.
Yeah, but I think we're getting closer just to knowing what the government's been doing for the past 80 years. But you have to wonder about all the other presidents. Like, the amount of things that every American president has not said.
Right.
The amount of things that people just very obviously lied about. Like, why? What are they so afraid of? You just got elected by the population of the most powerful country in the world. Why do you care? You got your army behind you. They're your voters. Why can't you tell obvious truths about things? Like, what are you afraid of exactly? That is, like, I mean, if you want to understand people's behavior,
right,
look at it through that lens. What are they not saying? What are they not doing? What are the limits they're imposing on themselves? And why are they imposing
Why are they doing
limits?
that?
What exactly are you afraid of? You control the Pentagon and the FBI.
Right.
It's not like you don't have bodyguards.
Right.
You've got tens of thousands of bodyguards.
It's a great question. Donald Trump, again, has said, I reject the premise that I have to be quiet, which I think is a very refreshing approach. And the question is, how far will he go? And I hope he does go.
I totally agree, but it would be interesting to know what the control mechanisms are. And the last thing, I'll shut up, but the last thing I would just recommend anyone watching is to go pull the audio of Richard Nixon in the Oval Office speaking to the then CIA director about, among other things, the Kennedy assassination and the fear or the sort of deference that Nixon has is very striking. Nixon's a pretty brave guy in a lot of ways, but it's you're talking to your employee. You're talking to your housekeeper. Like, you don't need deference. What? Answer the freaking question, pal, or I'll fire you. There's none of that in his voice. None.
No, I know. Because
you've got employees. Do you tiptoe around when you talk to them? Like, did you finish the assignment? Are you embarrassed to ask that? No. They're your employees.
Because the power structure as it's been constructed over the last 100 years, how do I? There's a couple of threads I want to go down with that question.
He's not really talking to his employees.
He's not talking to his employees.
Masters,
yes,
actually.
Yeah, he's talking to the real decision makers inside of our government, which was the whole point.
It's crazy.
No, I mean, in American Leviathan, the people have to understand, progressives hated the Constitution. They wanted to destroy the political and moral authority of it. They wanted to do away with the machinery of the republic. They wanted to do a separation of powers, all of these things. And in its place, put in this massive administrative state, this massive bureaucracy filled with unelected bureaucrats who they thought our elected representatives should subdelegate governing and legislating to, because they thought the bureaucrats should actually be doing the business of governing and running the country. So I think people are a little perplexed when they see behavior like this of where the unelected bureaucrats, like Chris Wray, remember at that hearing with Grassley, with the Oversight Committee hearing, and Wray informs him, hey, I got to go. I got to get on my plane. I've got an important trip to be at. It was a family vacation, by the way. He told off the Senate that was supposed to be providing oversight. I have to leave. And he goes on the FBI jet to his private vacation home to enjoy a little downtime. He was telling off the people that were supposed to be providing oversight because it's not really how it works anymore. But that was
those people never threatened. Okay.
But that was the point from day one.
Chris will defund you. I mean, why is that?
This is what I say. So
we're not going to build you a new building.
The whole point was for these unelected bureaucrats to be doing the governing, to be doing the decision making. It'd be nice if Congress said, you know what? We hold the purse strings. We're not going to fund you anymore. We're just simply not going to fund you.
Why did the Speaker of the House sign off on a new FBI building?
Great question.
Like, what's that? Can we let's just be totally blunt now. What is that? The Republican Speaker of the House, who strikes me as like an out-of-the-closet liberal, more than weak, working for the other side. I mean,
he's the best speaker Democrats could hope for.
So what?
And not a fan, and I kind of understand some of the political dynamics of why Trump is pushing for him to avoid, 17 votes or whatever it was. Let's get down to business that we had last time. So I kind of understand some of that. At the same time, I mean, could Democrats hope for a better speaker right now with them being in the minority? I don't think so. Mike Johnson is one of the best things they could hope for right now. He gives them whatever they want to. I think this recent spending bill, the initial version of it, really shows the true nature of who someone is that allows something like that to go to come out and be in public with this 1,600 page monstrosity. I think that was the true illustration of how weak he actually is. But yeah, I mean, these guys have been performing political lawfare inside of our government against not only the president, but I would argue members of Congress and for years. And you're going to go ahead and reward them with, I can't even remember the cost for a new FBI headquarters, but it's not millions, it's hundreds of millions, right?
Of course.
Why are you rewarding these people that have badly abused our system? Who, by the way, I don't think right now in their current iteration, the DOJ and the FBI, we always consider them the guardians of the rule of law, and one of the basic pillars of our society was rule of law and the equal enforcement of justice, that all stood equal before the law, and the DOJ and the FBI were going to enforce that and make sure that happened. Now they're just a Praetorian Guard of the administrative state. Why are you funding them? Why are you rewarding them for this behavior in which, quite frankly, I would go back to self-preservation. If you really do believe in self-preservation as a party and as an opposition party, because the DOJ and the FBI and the various parts of the administrative state are protecting the administrative state, and they view Republicans, for the most part, as a threat to that. Why are you funding them to continue doing more damage to you and trying to destroy you? Are you insane? Makes no sense.
What's the answer?
I think they're weak. I don't think they understand what time it is. I don't think they fully come to the I don't think they want to maybe fully examine the reality of what is.
They seem afraid of their enemies, but not of their friends.
Yeah.
They seem more eager to please their enemies than to please their allies.
To what end? In hopes that they'll get eaten last? This to me is, at some point you have to wake up to the reality of what's going on.
Yep.
And if you don't, it might be too late. And that's why I think Donald Trump being reelected is a huge step in the right direction of hopefully he can instill a little bit of a spine.
Who's he going to pardon?
Backbone. Who is Trump?
Yep.
Going to pardon? Well, I hope they won. It's all the January 6th.
I think that's right.
I mean, listen, there are so many different questions that have now risen. I had questions when it actually happened. Like, something's wrong here. You can't, I mean, all the chaos, there's something wrong.
Well, now we just know it's just a setup.
It was a setup.
Yeah.
I think he has to go out and not only pardon them, I would hope that they get good lawyers and they get massive settlements from the government for all the abuse they've taken over the last 4 years. Significant.
And I hope all the media people I used to work with who hated me for saying that apologize, because now
the
evidence.
No, they haven't apologized. They haven't apologized for Russiagate.
No, they haven't.
They didn't apologize for using a fake dossier and saying this is proof of Russian collusion, when, quite frankly, I think a lot of them, well, some of them didn't because they're not smart enough. Some of them knew that it was fake. They just viewed it as a useful weapon to take out someone they hated. I think some of them actually believed it because they're dumb.
So he pardons the J6 defendants. Amen. I think he will. He said he will.
Yep.
Immediately. But Biden just pardoned a bunch of murderers, including people who murdered children and drug dealers.
Yep.
So, I mean, there's a precedent for, big pardons. Do you think there's a lot of people are going to get pardoned?
I hope so. I mean, I couldn't give you a list of names, but
the victims of lawfare.
Yeah, I would think that he can go through and just go for the last 4 years, or quite frankly, 8 years, everybody that has been abused by this political lawfare, who's been abused by the DOJ and the FBI and every other aspect of our government, full pardon. And again, go back to not just the pardons. Not only do you get your freedom back and your lives back, but I hope that there's significant settlements.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope that these people get paid out significantly. And I don't like to see more taxpayer money being sent out to people. But in this situation, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I am too. Speaking of spending, so you said the goal has to be to uproot the tree, not just pare down its branches. Tree. Right, the American Leviathan.
This is the tree.
If there is a debt crisis, and I think everyone is, whether they say it out loud or not, really concerned about.
Yeah.
You know.
What are we, 36 trillion?
Right. And by debt crisis, I mean specifically the reluctance of other countries and institutions to buy our debt.
Right.
You know, because that then we're really hamstrung. Could a debt crisis, which is probably coming at some point, be used to uproot the tree? Because it's like very expensive to have a government this big.
It is. It's unsustainable.
Right.
I mean, this is at some point. And I think we're coming to that. I think we have come to that point. I think we came to that point a long time ago, actually. But now it's becoming unsustainable. I mean, at one point, was it last year or 2 years ago, we were growing it by $1 trillion in 100 days, every 100 days or something, the national debt. It's exploding. I think Trump thinks he can grow us out of some of these situations. I don't think that's the solution. At some point, you have to address the underlying of what are we actually doing with this government that continues to grow, that the DNA and its DNA is perpetual growth? Again, going back to, if you believe the state is salvation and it should invade every aspect of your life, well, until every aspect of your life is saved, government will continue to grow. You have to completely destroy this to stop the spending, to stop the growth. So I think he has to go down that dual path. Yeah, we growth in our economy, but at the same time, the underlying cause for the debt, the spending, has been this state. And I think we have to have a conversation. This is the one thing where it feels like the American people, we never actually had a conversation with the American people about what form of government they wanted. It was just a slow-moving regime change, I would argue, a slow-moving revolution against the republic over the last 100 years. People are under the illusion we have some representative democracy, constitutional republic, when in fact we don't. What is the government that we think best fits, that is best suited for a government of, by, and for the people, that provides the most amount of freedom and liberty and the most amount of prosperity for the American people? And I don't think we've really had that conversation over the last 100 years. It's just kind of been slow moving, and all of a sudden we wake up to find ourselves in 2024, 2025 now, going, I don't think we ever had a conversation about this.
Because the country was rich, and as long as you're
it was rich,
you don't worry about
and
details.
And the economy was growing, and life was great, and we're just going to continue on. This will never end. But that's not how history works. That's not how. At some point, the music stops. And people have to have hard conversations about what are we actually doing to make sure that this is sustainable in the future. Because what we have is not sustainable at all on any level.
Are you ready to make getting a good night's sleep your New Year's resolution? It's a worthy resolution. Cozy Earth completely transformed the way we sleep, and it's made the difference. Everyone on our team agrees. They got bamboo sheet set. It sounds weird, but it's awesome. Ask anyone who works here. They love them. Cozy Earth sheets made from 100% premium bamboo derivatives are soft and breathable, and they get better with every wash. Again, sounds weird until you try it, in which case you are hooked. Cozy Earth also prioritizes quality and care with a 100-night sleep trial. So that means you try their sheets for up to 100 nights. If you don't love them, you send them back for a full refund. We're not going to ask what they do with those sheets, but you get your money back, so there's no risk. A good night's sleep is essential. Visit CozyEarth.com/Tucker. Use our exclusive code Tucker for up to 40% off. And if you get a post-purchase survey, mention you heard about Cozy Earth from this show. We'd be grateful. You were a backer of Kash Patel for FBI director.
Yeah, I mean, I lobbied Trump on it.
Why? And what do you think? Why do you think it's a good idea that he's going to run the FBI?
So I was deeply concerned about, people. Somewhere inside of Trump world, someone was pushing Mike Rogers, which I thought was a terrible mistake.
Who's Mike Rogers?
Former FBI agent, was running for Senate, was a member of the House. Former FBI, was a member of the House, I think Intel Committee. Then was running for Senate this time around, lost narrowly. And then someone was pushing him to be FBI director, which I think was the wrong take by like a country mile. You don't need an institutionalist to go in and run what I think is one of the most corrupt institutions in our country today. And I told Trump, I was like, as much as you need a loyalist running DOJ, times 100 running the FBI. It's a pit of vipers. And you need somebody like Kash Patel. We talked about Rick Grinnell, Kash Patel. But you need somebody that's going to go in there and be fearless to say, we are not doing this anymore. In fact, I would kind of like, I know Kash has said this, again, we'll see what happens, but he said that day one he'd shut it down and turn it into a museum for the deep state. The FBI in its current form, its current iteration, needs to cease to exist. And I think Kash Patel has not only the intelligence and the skills,
who's going to commit terror attacks if we don't have an FBI?
Yeah, I know. This to me, I think we have to. What has been the point of the FBI? They started 1908, I think, is when they originated. What are they actually doing? What is their purpose right now? Besides being, Praetorian Guard for the administrative state, right? And looking at potential people like Donald Trump as existential threats and trying to destroy them.
Mm-hmm.
What? And then we continue to fund it blindly. This is writ large with our government, administrative state. What I find one of the most interesting things about Republicans today, and have for, quite frankly, years, elect me. I'm going to go to D.C. I'm going to change D.C. They get to D.C. They accept budget recommendations from these very department and agencies, go ahead and pass those, fund them, do these 4,000 or 5,000 page bills, send them over to the bureaucrats who, with their statutes and regulations, actually put a fine point on how this is actually going to look in reality. So they're doing the real governing. So they've not only given them all the funding without any real oversight, they just give it to them. They've then subdelegated their legislative authority to these unelected bureaucrats, and then go home and say, you need to send me back. I know those people at the EPA or the FDA made some terrible regulations that are ruining your lives, but send me back. I'll fight the system. And I'll make sure that doesn't happen again as they get reelected, to then fund those people again, to then send them forward 5,000 page bills, to then do the statutes and regulations that actually govern us. The whole system is completely bonkers. And it's actually very beneficial to most of these elected representatives.
Yeah.
Experts in self-preservation, because they don't have to make the hard choices. They don't actually have to do the really hard decisions on legislating, because the statutes and regulations that have the binding effect of laws is what's being done over here in the Article 2 branch by these administrative state bureaucrats. At some point, I do have some hope that we're going to have a chance, not only with Donald Trump, but the Supreme Court. The last summer, there were a couple cases that I think gave us real hope.
Yes.
It was not only Chevron deference, where the Supreme Court said,
my favorite case,
40 years, this is a disaster. We're not going to have judicial deference to these bureaucrats. Regulations and statutes. I think the other one that wasn't discussed as much that should have been is when the Supreme Court said the SEC tribunals, you can't have those anymore. The SEC cannot have its own private administrative law tribunal in which 90% of the time that SEC tribunal ruled in favor of the SEC. The Supreme Court said, first of all, it calls into question the idea of an independent judiciary, because you're taking the judicial role inside the Article 2 branch, not the Article 3, and you've annihilated our Seventh Amendment, which is right to trial by jury. We're not going to do this anymore. Which was, by the way, I mean, you look at some of these things that we're dealing with today and look at where the founders started. They wanted an independent judiciary because they saw what the British courts were doing in rubber stamping King George III and his ministers and Parliament's edicts that they viewed as very deeply unfair to them, but they were just acting as a rubber stamp. So they said, we're going to have an independent judiciary. And then with the administrative state, obviously, it's annihilated the separation of powers, and you have Article 2 branch doing a lot of the legislative and a lot of judicial. I think Supreme Court stepping up and saying we're not going to do this anymore is another step in the right direction. But at some point, I would hope that members of Congress would find it within themselves to have just the smallest bit of political courage to say, I'm not going to blindly fund this stuff anymore. And that's a step in the right direction. For example, with the FBI. We're not going to do this anymore. We can't do this anymore. For our own sakes. For the sake of the country.
I think it's important for the White House to lead on issues like that. But
it is.
Just how about no? How about no?
I would very much like Donald Trump to say the FBI does not deserve a new headquarters.
Yeah, that and a lot of other issues, just like no.
Just make statements.
Yeah, exactly. What happens to Kamala Harris now?
Where does she go from here?
Yeah. Where does she go? I know you're not a Democrat, but
the ash heap of history.
But typically you run for president and you lose on the Democratic side, and you get, well, John Kerry's our climate czar, I guess, right? And there's always a soft landing for the loser.
I don't think so. Not for her.
Tell me.
I think she was such a disaster. They got stuck. I mean, first of all, they boxed themselves into a corner of their own making.
Yes.
Right? They knew Joe Biden.
They got a DEI candidate and they lived with the results.
Right. And then all of a sudden realized in June, this isn't going to cut it.
I'm glad they didn't make her like a commercial airplane pilot. America got out pretty easy.
Right. We did. And I think they got stuck and they realized this is the only horse we've got to ride. They tried to pull it off. It looked for a couple of weeks, maybe they've got a shot. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, obviously, the reality of who she is.
Yep.
A lightweight, intellectually a lightweight, so far in over her head. It's clear that she's just been going up the ranks as a DEI advancement for her whole life.
Yes.
I think they're going to be very happy for her to fade off into obscurity. I mean, all this. I saw some.
You feel sorry for it at all?
I do not at all.
I kind of do. Maybe I'm the liberal here, but I feel like she's a victim of self-esteem culture, and I think
She's allowed herself to be that, though.
she had. No,
I mean, she's been a beneficiary of it. She's had.
Well, she became vice president of the United States.
Well, I'm saying based off, being completely honest, based off her talents or lack thereof, or her skill sets, whatever, she's had a pretty freaking good life.
No, she had. No, you're
Great
absolutely
life.
right. But imagine
Far above and beyond what she should have done.
Yeah, no, you're right. But that's true. But she's also just a vessel for the ambitions of others. Like she's almost like an innocent bystander, kidnapped off the street, just human trafficked into her current position. Do you know what I mean? It's like you just look like the kind of person.
I don't know if I've ever heard it described that way.
No,
I'm gonna have to think about
I'm
that.
A liberal, but she's so dumb, and you just could. What is that phrase they use? Imposter syndrome.
Yes,
where you sort of know that you're not qualified to be doing what you're doing, and people say they feel that way, but her whole life was that.
She has no future in national politics.
Oh, for sure. So will she be the head of the douchebag foundation or wherever they sort of put people like that?
I don't know. I really don't.
Not, right?
It feels like she has completely even though she's still, vice president for a few more weeks, it feels like she has already been relegated to obscurity. And I think that's going to be the rest of her. Yeah, it's going to be the rest of her existence. I'm sure that somewhere someone will find her a nice gig at a foundation, but I think this is the last time you're going to see any serious conversation about her.
I think they should be required to keep her in the public eye. Like George Floyd, I always felt like once we declared him Jesus. I don't know if you remember that.
We deified
I wanted
him.
to keep talking about George Floyd.
Right.
Like, why don't we have George Floyd Day?
Right.
Like, let's talk about, his porn career
I think
and his drug addiction and his armed robbery conviction.
I think they're more than happy for her to just simply fade away into
so I don't think they should be allowed to do that. I don't think they should be allowed to memory hole Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
Like, she should have to explain how her first name is pronounced and why she doesn't do so consistently. I think she should be forced to talk a lot more, just to like make them live, like make the dog return to his vomit.
Right.
That's what we should make them do.
We should.
Like, where is Kamala Harris? She's like the greatest joy spreader this country's ever seen. How did she disappear?
I think they will do everything that they can to avoid that. I think they will do everything they can to make sure that we never have a conversation about her again.
She should be president of Harvard. I think, no, I'm serious. You should take their most beloved institution, the most rotten, corrupt, disgusting, overrated,
You should start a petition on this.
For real. Like, she's such a genius. She's so incredibly accomplished. She's the most accomplished woman who ever ran for president. She should be required to be the head of Harvard. How great would that be?
I like that.
Yes.
Sure, let's do it. We could start a campaign together.
Don't you think?
Let's do it.
But in real life, like, she's just going to fade.
She's gone.
Yeah,
she's gone.
What about Jill Biden?
Dr. Jill?
Sorry, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to be sexist. She has an education degree from the University of North Delaware or whatever.
You mean our first female president?
Yeah.
Come on. I think the scary part to me over the last 4 years is that we knew, some of us knew sooner than others, but I think a lot of people knew this guy had early cognitive decline. He was already in some stage of dementia.
His sister was telling people, I know that.
From pretty much day one.
For president.
Right, from pretty much day one of him being sworn in. I mean, this to me is one of the great scandals of, I don't know, however many generations of political history.
Ever, yeah. That
we had Joe Biden in the White House in cognitive decline, early dementia, whatever you want to call it, who was actually running the country for 4 years. I mean, this to me is like it's a Woodrow Wilson replay, right? Where his wife and his chief of staff were actually running most of...
Tony Blinken, I think, was running.
You think Blinken?
I do.
Yeah.
But certainly the meaningful parts of the...
And then everybody covered it up.
Yeah, I know.
Like, wait.
Joe Scarborough, this is the greatest version of Biden ever.
So, yeah, Dr. Jill, our first female president, should have a bright future in front of her, whatever she wants to do. And
the one thing I always liked, well, there were actually, honestly, a couple things I always liked about Hunter Biden. I know you're not supposed to say it, but, I knew him well, and I always kind of liked him. And drug addiction was he became a monster because of cocaine and pills, as many do. But he hated her.
Really?
Oh, he thought she was a screaming bitch. And he said so in person, and he said so in writing on his laptop. Oh, yeah. He said that she was a bitch and stupid. And I think that's a fair assessment from someone who spent his life living with her. Like, he would, if anyone would know what Dr. Jill is really like, it's her stepson, Hunter, who started dating his dad when he was like 4 or something. So, and I don't know why Republicans didn't make more of that. And everyone wanted to focus on the crack and the toe sucking and everything, but Dr. Jill is stupid and a bitch.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought that was great.
Republicans aren't used, again, going back to what we discussed earlier, they're not used to fighting bare-knuckled, brawling style, and they think that would have been beneath them and undignified.
Undignified.
And these people were for 4 years. And this was not, I mean, I think we have to have when we talked about immigration and our foreign policy and the inflation and economy and all these things were taking place. When there's a series of coincidences, it ceases to be a coincidence.
Yes.
It was all systematic.
Yes.
We're just going to continue to destroy this country. We're going to completely remake it with massive illegal immigration. I mean, this to me is why I can't understand. These people hate this country. They hate the country as originally founded. They hate the original Constitution. They hate the idea of the freeborn American people.
They hate whites, if I can just say.
There's a lot of things that they have hated for a long, and they intentionally and systematically were seeking to destroy us and our way of life. And Republicans, a lot of Republicans in D.C. are going along with it, going, oh, they're really not that bad, are they? Yes, they are. They truly are. And they would hope their goal, I think, is to see this country cease to exist as it once was and to create some new order for this country that has nothing to do with where we came from at all.
I think people feel that.
But they wouldn't fight.
One of the no, they wouldn't. One person who I think is a true bright spot in the Republican Party, there are a couple, but the brightest of all, in my view, is J.D. Vance.
Yes.
Who has a gut level understanding of everything you just said, is legit smarter than I think people understand, like actual high IQ character.
Yeah.
Not a ton of those in politics, and also a decent person, kind of normal person. So he's now vice president. What does that mean?
I have to tell you, one of the most you've known JD longer than me. I met him when he was thinking about running for Senate.
Yes.
In the primary. Got to know him. I obviously lobbied Trump to endorse him in the primary and Senate.
Good for you.
So got to know him a little bit there. Obviously lobbied a little bit for him to be VP. I know you and Don Jr. did a lot more on that front, but it was like, this is the future of the country. I texted him. The most impressive part to me is having known him, seeing where he's come from. You get put in pressure cookers like he was put in over the last year. You either collapse, you rise. He's gone next level. I mean, this to me is, obviously he's an intelligent person. He's very talented. But you get put into those situations, you either collapse or rise, and he rose. And I think he's gone to the next.
Did he?
He's gone to the next level, which is extremely impressive. And I think the thing that was really important for me in who Trump picked as his VP was the future of what does America First look like after I'm gone. He's got 4 years. He's done. Right. That's it. And I think a lot of people in D.C., permanent D.C., establishment Republicans, corporate, you name it, we just have to outlast him for another 4 years. And then he goes in, and now JD's 40, but he was 39 at the time, and goes, tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to pick a 39-year-old VP who is going to be the heir to America First. When I'm gone, he's going to be around for a long time. Like, this is the I'm pushing all my chips in. This is an all-in move on America First. You're not going to just outlast me for 4 years. I'm going to make this into a permanent, long-term political movement.
Yeah.
That to me was what he did with JD. And JD got put into that situation, pressure cooker, rose to the occasion. And I think he has really, it's been extremely impressive to me. I mean, everything that he has done. I mean, having done a lot of TV, what he would do on the Sunday morning shows, not one or two, but sometimes three on a given day, going in and dismantling each one of those antagonistic, hostile hosts. I'm so impressed by what he did and was able to do.
I feel the same
Not
way.
easy. And he did it so well and rose to the occasion every time, by the way. Which you and I mean, I've done enough TV. Sometimes you're like, that wasn't the greatest. It seemed like every time he went in and did this, I was just like, that is so freaking impressive.
Well, it's amazing. I spent my life in TV. I can tell you that. I mean, I don't think that beating a lot of these people are stupid, like beating George Stephanopoulos or Margaret Brennan or something.
Have you come to the same conclusion I have? That if you're a corporate propagandist, you can't be intelligent or smart because you can't be a free thinker.
And you have no
you have to accept.
Dignity.
Right.
No self-respect.
Right.
But what I found amazing as someone who did it for a living my whole life was not just that he won the arguments, he's smarter than they are, is that he did something that I could not do, which is remain kind of cheerful,
calm,
charming, calm.
Yep.
Retain, just has enormous self-control. And I couldn't do that. I think I could probably beat Margaret Brennan in an argument, I hope.
Right.
But I would come off as like sneering and angry and anti-women or something. You know what I mean? But JD,
no, I know.
JD was amazing.
Oh,
I could not do that.
No, I couldn't either. I get fired up and kind of get a little snarky and
yeah, exactly.
Very pugilistic at times. And he's very calm, dignified, very rational, highly intelligent.
Yes.
But I think that to me is, again, going back to what Trump did with him, we're all in on this. A young VP who hopefully we're going to have a very successful 4 years with Trump. He's going to use JD effectively, set up JD in the future. And then all of a sudden, because going back to what I said earlier, You don't fix what we've been going through for the last 100 years in 18 months. You don't even fix it in 4 years. I think we need no less than 12 years of political power with the right people in D.C. to actually bring about the fundamental change necessary. So you have to set yourself up for at least 12 years of political power. 4 years of Trump, 8 years of JD.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you've got the ability with the right people doing the right things to actually bring about the right reform necessary to restore the republic. This is about, but going back to, and I totally agree with you about political power has to be in the right hands doing the right things to achieve the right ends. But this to me is why we have to achieve and retain political power for no less than 12 years in DC.
If you're still using Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile, obviously our condolences, but you're going to want to hear this. Our cell phone company, Pure Talk, gives us the exact same service you're currently getting from those big companies, but for half the cost. Not a joke. There's no reason to spend $85 or $100 per month per person on your wireless bill. Now you can get unlimited talk, text, and 15 gigs of data with mobile hotspots for just $35 a month. You don't have to be a math major. The average family of four saves about $1,000 a year with Pure Talk. You enjoy America's most dependable 5G network, support small businesses. We would know that because they are now powering TCN. It can probably save you money too. So cut the fat out of your wireless bill. Switch to Pure Talk by going to puretalk.com/Tucker. You'll save an additional 50% off your first month. Pure Talk, America's wireless company. Can I just use this opportunity, because I can't control myself, to throw out something that I'm legit concerned about?
Yep.
Not directly related to Trump or even politics, but so we've had all these problems with the labor market, and COVID made them much worse, paying people to stay home, so they did. So a lot of the service industry is being replaced by robots. Like you check out at the airport, at the kiosk, and you know what I mean? There's
automation.
No one there. Automation. Yep. So I've watched for the past 4 years as the left systematically has destroyed law enforcement and order in our cities. And like, who would want to be a cop at this point? Right. It's too hard a job. You don't have the legal protections you had. It's physically dangerous and everyone hates you and you don't get paid anything.
Right.
So you're going to have a massive crisis. You have a massive crisis in law enforcement because no one wants to be a cop.
Right.
That void will be filled by technology. It'll be filled by drones and it'll be filled by other technology. It'll be basically replaced by a tech surveillance state that will make civil liberties absolutely impossible. You can't have civil liberties.
You cannot.
In a panopticon or whatever they call it. In a world where technology knows everything that you're doing.
Right.
And saying and maybe even thinking. And I don't feel like people are worried enough about that. Like you could make New York City safe with drones.
Right.
You could prevent any traffic violations whatsoever with robots.
But what's behind it? There's nothing neutral in life.
It's total control of the population.
It is.
Through technology. So we're moving toward that. I don't hear anybody saying anything about it.
I remember having a conversation with the head of a tech company, pretty prominent one. Molly Hemingway was there with me, talking about the algorithms and how biased they were.
Man, is she a smart chick.
She's very smart. She's
and
one of my
great person.
One of my favorite people
me
in DC.
Too. I totally agree.
And we were sitting there talking with this person. He goes, no, algorithms are neutral. Afterwards, I looked at her, I was like, he just lied to us.
Nothing is neutral.
Nothing's neutral in life. That to me is one of the things that I think is the greatest.
It's neutral.
There's nothing.
Like science. It's neutral. Take the COVID vaccine.
So that to me is that there's nothing neutral in life at all. And so the whatever influence is going behind the AI and the technology will be biased in one direction or another. And then you have a situation of who's controlling the controllers. Who controls that technology? What is their end goal? What do they believe about human rights? What do they believe about civil liberties? What do they believe about basic freedom? I'm concerned about the whole AI singularity.
Oh, of course.
This to me, the Sun SoftBank guy, soon. He spent when he announces he's going to spend $100 billion to create jobs here in America, I'm like, please go away. I don't want you anywhere near this country. He has spent tens of billions of dollars trying to advance and accelerate singularity, in which AI is really truly doing the governing of this world. And we lose a lot of our humans are not running the world. It's singularity, it's AI, it's all this technology. It's actually doing it because they'll do it better.
It defeats sovereignty and free will and therefore humanity.
That's what I'm saying. It completely annihilates the idea of humanity. And this is the guy that's been doing it. So I think this to me is, I know Elon has said some things that, we need to have a conversation about AI. I don't think we need to have a deeper conversation about AI,
but we won't.
Singularity, and where we're actually headed and what do we want our future to look like.
So you can't introduce any massive disruptive change really against the will of the population. You need consent. And the only way you get consent is by terrifying them and making them feel like your solution, while imperfect, is better than what they have. So
we're not giving them the truth, but keeping them ignorant.
What I'm saying is you create chaos. You destroy your cities.
State of fear.
You create a state of fear.
Yeah.
You do to people with crime and immigration what COVID did.
So Michael Crichton.
So they'll accept anything.
Yeah, Michael Crichton wrote a great book, State of Fear. I actually cite him in the book, in which he's talking about the political science of global warming and how it puts people into perpetual state of fear to achieve the certain political goals of people, what they want to achieve. But the whole idea of keeping people in a perpetual state of fear to manipulate them into getting what these people want to achieve the future they want, which might or might not be, typically not, beneficial to the rest of the people. But it's fear. It's a tactic of fear. Like, COVID's going to kill you all. So you should stay inside your house and wear masks and be 6 feet apart, which was all made up, by the way.
Of course.
Which isn't that funny where they say, trust the science? And then they go, well, yeah, men can be women, women, men. But you only trust the science when we say what science is. Science is what we say it is. But in that situation, it's not. The intellectual incoherence of the left drives me nuts. But that's what happens when you kind of, when you cut the cord to the transcendent, this idea of a transcendent creator and natural inherent rights and something above and beyond is infinite. And then you all just devolve into this theater of the absurd because whatever you say at the moment is right. If there's no absolute, society becomes absolute. So whatever society says in that moment becomes absolute. So men can be women and women men. And you just make it up as you go along. And that's why I think kind of some of the stuff is being exposed. Fauci, 6 feet. Well, you just made that up. The vaccine wasn't a vaccine. I remember being castigated on a certain network that I think people would have been surprised for saying that I thought the shot at best was a therapeutic shot. And you would have thought I shot somebody's dog.
Who castigated you?
You know, some network that would have been surprising for people.
The network that was requiring vaccines, COVID vaccines for their employees, you mean?
A lot of people were. Newsmax, by the way, was.
Nothing is faker than Newsmax. Sorry.
I have to tell you, I think the COVID test was a test that many people failed on the conservative side of things because they believed the lies told by the so-called experts. It was a test. They failed miserably. And I actually got texts from people a couple weeks in when I realized this is not, I have real questions here. I don't think this is what people are cracking it up to be. And they were texting me, what's up with all your boomer tweets? What's going on here? Like, this is serious stuff. I said, why do you accept blindly that the CDC and the NIH are suddenly pure as driven snow, when over the last several years, we've seen the DOJ and the FBI and other parts of this state be weaponized against and used for political purposes, and now suddenly different branch of the same tree is somehow pure as driven snow? I'm like, I'm sorry, I just think if you think through this in a reasonable, rational way, I think you should really strongly question anything that's coming out of the CDC and the NIH or anything else, because I think there's a certain political element to what they're actually pushing. And I think that's how you had, I was kind of stunned when so many conservatives fell for it. Like, why can't you just step back and go, this is heavily politicized. This is probably heavily politicized. I'm not sure. I don't trust them. So why should I trust? I don't trust them either. And I've told this is another thing that I think we need to start really emphasizing with a lot of us. I tell my kids,
think for yourself.
I tell my kids all the time, question everything.
Yeah.
Except for me. I'm your benevolent dictator.
But you're the patriarch.
That's right.
No questioning the patriarch.
There's no question.
There, yes.
But that's how you get to the truth. You have to question everything to actually get to the truth of what is, and don't accept something on its face value.
Why should I take orders from anyone who pushed the vax ever again?
Yeah.
Is that fair? I mean, that seems like a pretty just simple.
I don't believe you. I'm sorry. I don't believe you. Until you can actually prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that what you're telling me is true, I don't believe you. And I think that should be our entire approach to all of government right now.
I mean, this is why the Bobby Kennedy nomination is essential. It's like, whatever you think of Bobby Kennedy, I love Bobby Kennedy, but
right.
Don't agree with him on everything, of course. But Bobby Kennedy was the opposition to that. And he
if we can break
rewarded.
The hold of Big Pharma, I mean, that to me is a step in the right direction of what's going on. Not only...
It's just funny that the people who make Xanax, who should be in prison for making Xanax, in my opinion, kills a lot of people, destroys so many lives. Those people are lecturing me about how Bobby Kennedy is bad. You make Xanax?
Right.
And you're telling me Bobby Kennedy is bad.
Who, by the way, also started the opioid crisis. All the things that have gone through Big Pharma over the years. Yeah. And
opioids are obvious. Xanax is very subtle. Everyone's on Xanax. Try to get off Xanax, Yeah. These people, I think they're criminals. That's my personal opinion.
I hope that the American people over the last 9 years, especially, everything that's taken place, would have a healthy dose of skepticism about anything coming out of our government and our corporate propagandists moving forward and go, I'm not going to accept you at face value. until you can be verifiable proof of what you're saying. I think that'd be a very healthy approach for us moving forward.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. So just bottom line it for us, having spent, by the way, when you wrote this book, like what kind of mood were you in? You must have felt pretty dark.
I was in a mood of my rights as a freeborn American and the country I was promised, constitutional republic, government of, by, and for the people, has been annihilated, has been destroyed. We have an illusion of it. We are being lectured that somehow our betters, who are these unelected bureaucrats who are a credentialed idiocracy, somehow are the ones that should be governing us and ruling us. And I wanted to have a conversation. I wanted to start a conversation with the American people with the book of these people do not have your best interests in mind. They have taken away your birthright as a freeborn American people. They have annihilated the constitutional republic. They have destroyed the machinery of the republic, which is the best protector of your natural inherent rights. And they did it intentionally. I mean, the progressives don't believe in natural inherent rights. They're actually vehemently opposed to a rights-based government.
Of course.
They thought that rights do not, I mean, Frank Goodenow, who was really one of the guys that structured the administrative state through administrative law, said that an individual does not possess rights from his creator, but from his society. His society is the one that gives an individual his rights. Because they believe the state should give rights back to the people if it was a benefit to the state. You can't have natural inherent God-given rights because it becomes a monkey wrench in their progressive idea of the state of salvation, efficiency towards, progress. All of these things that have taken place, and I was just like, we have to have this conversation. I mean, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. We have not had this conversation about who we are as a people, what our birthright is, what our rights are, what our God-given rights are, what government should actually look like today. And let's have that conversation, and then have the conversation about how we get back to where we started. I mean, the Constitution is the greatest political document the world's ever seen. And it was written by men who are not perfect, by the way. They had their own share of faults. They got it. They nailed it. They realized they were imperfect human beings in an imperfect world. They were optimistic realists, though. They realized that God had given rights. They were optimistic that even though we knew they were imperfect human beings who should never have consolidated power, they could form a government that protected those natural God-given rights and took none of them away. And it provided for this amazing, small agrarian country, kind of on the edge of that Eurocentric world in the late 1700s, to become, honestly, I would say the greatest nation the world has ever seen. How does that happen? It's not by chance. It's because these guys knew, they understood human nature, they fully understood a transcendent creator with natural inherent rights. We're going to create this constitutional republic. We're going to create the greatest amount of freedom as possible for the flourishing of freedom and prosperity. And the progressives completely fundamentally rejected that turn of the 20th century and said, no, we don't believe in that. We don't believe that that has the answers to the 20th century. We believe we should put together this massive bureaucracy filled with these unelected bureaucrats who, through applied science, will lead us to a greater future, who truly believed in the apotheosis of mankind. They believed that history was on this upward linear progress, that the end of history would be the perfection of mankind. Dead serious. No, so these are some of the poisonous ideas behind what's taking place in this country today.
They're also hilarious ideas. They're like so dumb. They're so dumb.
Rantings of deluded madmen is what I describe in the book, of Woodrow Wilson and Herbert Crowley and Frank Goodenow and all of these founders of the progressive, John Burgess, who, by the way, was the founder of political science in America, vehemently rejected a rights-based government, and he's considered the father of political science in America. So we should probably have questions about the whole exercise of political science.
Yeah.
So I was writing this book, and we are called deplorables and irredeemables and disruptive simply because we're asking for a restoration of our rights. We're asking for a restoration of what we had. In some ways, and that's why I consider myself a restorationist, not a conservative. But going back to what the founders were trying to do during the American Revolution, they were simply asking that we have our rights as Englishmen restored. You have taken them away. We want them restored. And I think we've kind of come to that same situation today where I am demanding and others are demanding, we want our rights restored. We want our government restored, a constitutional republic restored. We want a government that actually benefits and promotes the interests of the American people on all fronts every day. And we're not treated as an afterthought. We're not treated as the ATM for the ruling class. We're actually treated with the respect that is due us as a freeborn American people. And my sincere hope is that we actually have enough leaders in DC. I think we've got to start. We're going to need more with the political courage that understand the stakes and go, we're going to fight for this.
I agree with that strongly. But we're going to have to suffer to get there.
We are. Like I said, I think if what I think could happen over the next 4 years, we could be in for one of the more interesting periods in time that makes the last 9 years look like a warm-up act. But it's worth it. The fight's worth it.
Ned Ryan, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. We hope you'll subscribe to it. And by the way, you can also hit the little bell icon and get a notification every time we produce a video. We hope you'll do that too.
I'll tell you, this is a long way from being inmate number 408922424.
Well, I must say, your prison story, I've heard a lot of prison stories, one of the most incredible I've ever heard.
Yeah, I'm writing a book about it.
You should.
And it's an unusual story. It's a story that starts with one president, Obama. He started the whole thing because he sent someone to me to make a political deal for the senator. Ends with Trump. Okay? And most of it's about a governor in prison with Crips and Bloods, gangster disciples, Sinaloa cartel drug dealers who look up to El Chapo like my daughters look up to Taylor Swift. Murderers were in there for my first 3 years. I lived in a 6-foot by 8-foot prison cell. A far cry from the 50,000 square foot governor's mansion.
Well, it's incredible. But what's incredible to me was the fact that you survived it mentally, not just intact, but stronger. And I just find that, I mean, if you'd killed 10 people, it's not even about, I mean, I think you got screwed, as you know.
Thank you.
But even if you hadn't gotten screwed, I would still be in awe of your toughness, emotional, spiritual toughness to come out positive, focused, not bitter. I mean, that's remarkable to me.
Thank you. Thanks for saying that.
No, I mean it. Well, it's so obvious. How long were you away?
2,896 days, 1 month short of 8 years. Not that I was counting.
It's just, I'm sorry to laugh at your prison sentence.
Go ahead.
No, but it's just, it's remarkable.
If 3 years in that 6-foot by 8-foot prison cell, in the higher prison where they were squeezing me, with the gangbangers, murderers, bank robbers, pedophiles, transgender people who were half woman, half man, funded by you, the taxpayer.
Mermaids.
And you can't call them a woman or they'll throw you in the shoe, solitary confinement, they take away your good time. So I know what it's like to live in a society that's imposing what you can't even say, having been there for that time. But no, it was...
Well, that's such a smart point. I mean, they're basically trying to turn the country into an open-air prison where they control your behavior, your language, your thought.
Yeah, well said. Faith, hope, and love is what got me home. Faith, hope, and love, And, you get those moments when you find yourself in deep despair and you feel like there's no chance. The system is so rigged. You can't get justice. You can't even get mercy because you fought back. No one even said I took a penny. It was all politics. Requests for campaign contributions, no quid pro quo. We knew where the lines were. Tried me twice. And then you put your faith in the appellate court, and then they can't uphold the so-called sale of the Senate seat because if they allow that standard, government shuts down because that's all horse trading, and that's what they called it, and they were right. So they eventually reversed that, but I'm known for this. The other ones were 3 fundraising requests made by third parties, not even by me, and they knew not to make any promises or threats. And they criminalized it by using a standard that the Supreme Court said wasn't the law. And it was whitewashed by the appellate court to protect them. And, you get those moments. But then you say to yourself, it ain't about you anymore. It's about your daughters. They were little girls when I left home. And your wife. You got to be strong for them. And as long as you have purpose in life, you can survive anything. And Viktor Frankl wrote that book, Man's Search for Meaning, Holocaust Survivor. I mean, a million times worse than anything we went through. But his point was, the last of the human freedoms is our freedom to choose our own attitude in any given set of circumstances. Amen. It was very helpful. And I got to tell you, and this is not baloney. Am I on right now?
Yeah.
Yeah. The Bible. I mean, I was so alone in the beginning, and I reached for that Bible in a way I never did before. I wasn't going to bother with Genesis or Leviticus or Deuteronomy to get caught up in who's begetting who, because that would always slow me down when I try to read it in the real world. I went right to the Psalms and got inspiration, and then I moved on. I went to Isaiah and Jeremiah. Then I went to the Gospels. Paul, of course, and, well, all of them. And,
speaking of prison terms.
Exactly. In Rome. Yeah.
Paul did a lot of time.
He sure did. And it just gave me strength and drew me closer to God. I'm not running for anything, so I'm not giving any BS to your listeners. It was just real. And in some respects, I'm not saying it was good, But I'd have moments over the years where I would actually feel, some sort of real unique connection to God. And it was somewhat like what Solzhenitsyn had written when he was in Siberia. And he talked about, he had said something like, "Thank you, prison, for what you did for me, because but for what you did, I would not feel as close to God as I do now."
Boy, that's just such a remarkable perspective, such a non-American perspective. Thank you for prison.
Yeah, that's what he said. Yeah, that's what he wrote. I'm not quite going that far.
But I think what you're saying is that suffering turned you into a different man, a better man.
Yeah, I think, yes. And I think a greater appreciation for the things that really matter most in life, like the people in your life that you love, and the appreciation for the simple things that maybe you were, a little bit less aware of because you were so busy in the race of life to get ahead, right?
No iPhone must have been nice.
Yeah, there was no iPhone in the world at that time when I left home. When I got home 8 years later, what is this thing, right? Wow. The world changes. And that's another thing. It's humbling. Is it okay if I keep talking like this?
I hope you will.
Yeah. It's like, you ain't so good. You ain't so great, man. It ain't like the world waits for you. It just keeps spinning around, man. Huh?
That is the truth. In the end, all graves go unvisited. That should be on everybody's refrigerator.
Wow.
Your party changed
very
when you were
much.
Gone too.
Yeah.
What did you notice when you got back?
Well, I noticed this whole new thing called wokeness and cancel culture, which I wasn't aware of before I left. I noticed the intolerance of the far left of the Democrat Party. I noticed that my little girls grew up and became vegans. Not that they're, far left, but that was weird.
I'm sorry. I think that's it. I mean, there's nothing, I'm not against, whatever. Eat whatever you want or whatever you, don't eat what you don't want to eat. On the other hand, that's like the fear of every father that your girls are going to become vegans because it feels like it represents something else.
But it has nothing to do with diet. It's that they feel like it's wrong to, eat meat to, kill an animal. And it's a very sweet, kind thing on their point of view.
Oh, it is. No, I agree.
And then, I came home to a, working class neighborhood in Chicago. I mean, we lived in a nice little neighborhood, but where the local Democrat Party began to turn socialist. And, the local city council people, we call them aldermen in Chicago. I think in 2019, my sister-in-law was the alderman in our ward. She had inherited that seat from her father, had been there for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And she got beat by a socialist, lost by 12 votes, but a socialist. That was like shocking to me. And then some of the other longstanding members of the city council were defeated by socialists. And so suddenly that was this new realization that the Democrat Party at the grassroots level was radicalized.
Were they good at governing, the socialists?
No, they're terrible at governing. And now we're going to get a major property tax increase in Chicago. The mayor, Brandon Johnson, just announced that. And as I read that this morning, I was thinking driving here, geez, I wonder if we have any risk of getting carjacked up here in Bethel, Maine, right? Because in Chicago, you got to think about those things.
It's just funny. I mean, it's, people have all these ideologies and I'm a this or I'm a that, I believe. Here's my worldview. But I don't know, on some level, it's kind of about, do you make the town, the state, the country better to live in or not? And you're saying that the people who took over Chicago did not improve life.
No, they've made it more unsafe. They're unwilling to have any kind of open-minded discussion about the fact that the schools have been failing for generations, and most of the kids that are suffering are the black kids.
Yeah, for sure.
They talked a big game about being the side of the black people, but they won't even give a black mother a choice or a chance to maybe try another school because the public schools are so locked in to what the teachers' unions want. And I'm not here to say that I wasn't exactly, part of that Democrat Party and the unions and the teachers' unions.
You were part of it. That's why it's so interesting.
Yeah,
well, you're a product of it. You're the governor of the state, right? And you came out of that world.
I did.
So, that's why it's worth asking you about this, because you've seen the whole scope of it.
That's right.
From the daily years to present.
That's right. And, the Democrat Party that I was in, the party of the second Mayor Daley, the party of the first Mayor Daley, practical. Practical governance. Just make people's lives better.
They had the best snow plowing in the United States.
That's it.
When it snowed, Chicago got plowed before the suburbs. I saw it. It was amazing.
Yes, that's right. And not too stuck on ideology, but there were certain values that were fundamental to traditional Democrats. What were they? Love of country, faith, family, love of country. And this Democrat Party is none of those three. And there is an assault on faith in America by these Democrats, by the more radical Democrats. And it's something that has grown over the last couple of decades, something I saw when I was a Democratic member of Congress. I hope I don't turn your listeners off, but I supported Pelosi to be the Democrat leader when I was there. I saw even the beginnings of that when they were trying to take God out of the In God We Trust.
Well, she's a Catholic girl from Baltimore, son of the mayor.
Yeah.
She was she was the son of Baltimore's Mayor Daley, like an old school machine Democrat.
Right. That's right. But
she changed.
because she's a practical politician, and so she's gravitated towards that energy in the Democrat Party today, which is that far left socialist Democrat Party that wants to rechange America. And you say this, and I'll repeat what you say, and that is to force us and make us to try to believe things we know they're just not true.
Yes.
Right? And that's this dictatorial Democrat Party.
But you saw hostility to Christianity when you were there?
Yeah, I did.
Growing?
Yeah, in the late 90s, I did. You know, once in a while there'd be congressional resolutions to take God out of the chamber, the House chamber. And then there was the judge in Alabama, Roy Moore.
Yeah.
I'm proud to say that back in the late 90s as a Democrat congressman from the city of Chicago, I supported that judge. Why can't he put the 10 Commandments up there in his courthouse? What's wrong with the 10 Commandments? That's the foundation of our laws. It's the foundation of our values. So
that's literally true. It is the foundation of our laws.
It sure is. Yeah. Yeah.
So why were people so hysterical about Judge Roy Moore? I mean, they destroyed Judge Roy Moore.
Yeah, I know.
As a person.
I saw that from afar.
Yeah.
From the Deep Dark Valley. I watched all that. Because there's an element in America, and it's found a home in the Democrat Party that's all about science and absolutely nothing about religion. I think that part of the coalition is the Democrat Party, and I've been supportive of LGBTQ issues, but I think they feel threatened by Judeo-Christian values, and so they've become, in many respects, antagonistic to those traditional values. And these are some of the practical considerations that are part of why a lot of these Democrats have left the traditional Democrat, working person's view of God and have become more apt to embrace science. And, I'm not saying there's any advantages to being in prison for a long time.
Yeah.
But when you got all that time and you got to kill it, you either try to use it constructively or it'll kill you.
Yes.
And it's a good place to catch up on your reading.
Yeah.
And I used to read a lot of the sermons from Martin Luther King. And one of his sermons was really powerful. And he talked about what science can do, the good things. But it's God that provides the conscience to guide science.
Yes.
And, science creates the medicines that cure people, which is great. Also created the nuclear weapons that can destroy the world. What is it that's going to guide that? Are we going to trust in people? I know how people can be. I know how wicked they can be. The best and brightest can be corrupt because I know what they did to me and to my family. It was shocking to me that U.S. attorneys could be so dishonest and corrupt and that the judge would be in on it. Just go along with it. And so my faith's not in people.
So you were shocked? I mean, obviously you were distressed it happened to you, but you were shocked that it happens?
Yes. I thought they were the good. I was a Cook County prosecutor when I started out in a low level.
Yeah.
Daley, the second mayor Daley at the time, was the elected Cook County state's attorney. And he was my boss, so he's way up high. And I'm a traffic court, right? Just starting out. There were like 800 of us, assistants, big office. I ended up in the misdemeanor branch courts, and then I went into private practice. So I never met him when I worked for him. It was only until I became an elected official. And then in 10 short years, I became the governor. He was the mayor. He still thought I worked for him, by the way.
I bet.
Yeah. But
that's a fraught relationship always between Chicago mayor and Illinois governor anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. But I think that he's practical, and these Democrats have programs and stuff that they want to pay for, and bloated budgets are not a priority. And even the old school Democrats, that's not a priority. It's jobs and opportunities for people who've helped and that kind of thing. But the point I wanted to make about Daley was when I worked in that state's attorney's office, I learned a lot about how prosecutors operated, and they were all right, mostly good. But I imagine that the federal U.S. attorneys who went to the better schools, I could never have a chance to be one of them, right? Grades, I was a gentleman C scholar in law school, that these people had to be really smart, really bright, and they had to be super honest compared to the local Democratic prosecutors, many of whom had some political backing to get their jobs. And I discovered they are, in my case anyway, and I don't want to speak generally about everybody, but they're so corrupt. You can't get a fair trial. Well,
look at Andrew Weissman, it's at the very top, was a truly evil man.
Evil.
And, Weissman, I'm sure, was smart, clever anyway, and certainly well-credentialed and has almost unchecked power. I mean, it's crazy that exists.
So he destroyed Arthur Anderson with fake law. That's what they did to me, fake law. They just make it up. They just move lines to get the convictions. The Supreme Court took the case, and Weissman's standard that used to destroy Arthur Anderson and cost all those people jobs, 9-0, the Supreme Court ruled he was wrong. That wasn't the law.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so he destroyed and what does he get for that? He gets rewarded by being some big commentator on CNN, and people listen to this guy like he's honest.
It's disgusting.
It is disgusting.
So what, not to get sidetracked,
Sure.
but what is the Daley family? I think Rich Daley's still alive, right?
Yes.
What do they think of the modern Democratic Party, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden? Like, what do they think of that?
So Bill Daley.
Yeah, of course.
Ran for mayor of Chicago while I was in prison.
Yeah.
And shockingly got his ass kicked. in the new Chicago. And that's when Lori Lightfoot was elected, the new kind of mayor in Chicago, right? She was a big failure and she got defeated soundly. But the fact that a Daley could lose in Chicago was another reminder that, boy, times have changed.
Different population in Chicago.
Very different demographic now. The city that used to be, diverse racially, very strong, still, black population, still in the poor, bad, rough neighborhoods, a big Latino population, but it was a city of white, working class, white ethnics.
Yeah, Central Eastern European peoples.
That's right. Large Polish population.
Slavs.
That's right. That element is gone now. They 2-3 generations, they worked hard to build better lives for themselves. They take advantage, like our friend Philip over here, working hard to make the American dream. They've moved upward out of the city and into, more affluent suburbs.
But they were the basis of the city.
They sure were. And they've been replaced by these young, new generation, not very politically aware, probably driven by the social issues more than anything else. The woman's right to choose, those kinds of issues.
Right. So they've been replaced by affluent, white, inherited money kids.
That's right.
And illegal aliens.
Generally speaking, that's exactly right.
Right. So that's always the model. It's rich white women and illegal aliens working in tandem to destroy civilization. It is in cities across the country. That is the model. The unhappiest people and the most, the people with the least power who just can be used as cannon fodder for the program of the unhappiest people. So, but do you know what the Daleys think of this? Like watching their city become a joke?
Well, look, I know that I know Rich Daley better than Bill Daley. I know them both. And then there's John Daley, the younger one, and the father. I mean, this is not their Democratic Party.
No.
And Mayor Daley, who's in his early 80s now, he hosts a Christmas party every year, and I get invited. I get to see him, and he's had a couple of strokes, and then he hosts the St. Patrick's Day parties. You can imagine.
Of course he does.
I think he's quietly going to vote for Trump.
I'm sure.
Yeah, and Bill Daley maybe not, because he's sort of, he was more like, Bill Daley didn't win elected office. He was more of a appointed guy,
Yeah, he worked for Bill Clinton.
That's
and
right.
Still, right.
That's right. And, I don't want to demean him, but he doesn't have the same kind of testicular virility you got to have to be in the arena and be good at it. You know what I'm saying?
Run Chicago is not an easy thing.
That's right.
As the current mayor is proving.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Until not that long ago, the 1990s, the U.S. government classified encryption as a form of munitions and strictly controlled its use. In other words, encryption was considered a dangerous weapon. Both technology and law have changed a lot since then, but it's still true that encryption is a powerful weapon against, a defensive weapon against an entire army of bad actors who want to invade your privacy on the internet and then profit from it or control you. Thankfully, today you have the right to use encryption to protect yourself. You don't have to be a sophisticated computer programmer. You don't have to code in order to do it. Instead, you can use a simple app called ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN automatically encrypts and reroutes your internet connection through secure servers. And that makes everything you do online private. No one can monitor, record, manipulate, or profit from what you do online without getting your consent. You have your freedom back. Without encryption, your internet service provider can legally sell everything you do, your browsing history, to whomever they want, and data brokers can track your activity across every site you visit and then sell that information to marketers. But ExpressVPN makes it very, very easy to shut out all of those third parties, which is why we use it here. You tap one button, and when the app turns green, you are private. Your connection cannot be seen. And ExpressVPN works on every device you have, your phone, laptop, tablet, you name it, it works. So if you get it today, you get an extra 3 extra months of ExpressVPN for free just by using this special link. You go to expressvpn.com/Tucker. That's expressvpn.com/Tucker and get 3 extra months for free and begin to protect yourself. So what role did Obama play? I think most people thought Obama was like a sign that America was getting healthier, healing from, past trauma and all that. He was a sign of hope. And then it just got super evil. But when did you realize that Obama was not what he seemed to be, and what role did he play in the disaster in your life?
He started the whole thing. My story, the book that I'm writing, is a story that started with him on election night in 2008. It was magical, First black person, half black, and mom from Kansas, dad from Kenya, elected president. I've known him since 1995. We both came up together in politics, had good relationships. I was introduced to him by a guy by the name of Tony Bresco. I think that name is familiar to you, who's not nearly what the guy who's been portrayed. A businessman, very practical, extremely generous to Obama and good to Obama, helpful to both of us, raising money and things like that. And when I was elected governor, he would come to me with requests from Obama. And, a lot of it were appointments to high positions in state government. I was 2 years ahead of Obama in terms of going to the next level because I was the first Democrat governor elected in Illinois in 2002. And with this long and hard to pronounce last name, which was kind of cutting edge at the time, because for the most part, Illinois was electing guys with Anglo names or Irish names. We had Thompson, we had Edgar, and we had Ryun before me.
All those guys went to prison.
Well, Ryun did, yeah. Thompson put Governor Kerner in prison. That's another story. But and then I won.
It's like being a first lieutenant in Vietnam. The odds are bad.
Right, exactly. Right,
Yeah.
The death rate. But I think in some respects, I should apologize to the American people because I might have had something to do with Obama's success because I think he saw that if I won, and I could win downstate, in the rural areas and, deep southern Illinois, which is the American South, a guy like me from Chicago, he could do it. And with a name you can't say, his name, he could do it. And 2 years later, he did. And he got the opportunity to give that speech in Boston, which was his William Jennings Bryant moment, right?
Oh, yeah.
So he electrified the crowd with that speech.
I was there.
Yeah, so was I. I turned to Bobby Rush, the congressman, former Black Panther. I said, Bobby, just think about that. As soon as you got done with that speech, you're the only guy who's ever beaten that guy in an election because Obama challenged him in 1998. But no, I thought Obama was all right, kind of cold and impersonal, but okay. And I was happy to be helpful. But he's one of the more selfish people in politics on a one-on-one level. And he's not pure like the driven snow in the sense of his ethics or morality. And, Tony Resco's the guy who bought this lot next to Obama's home. And one of the things I write about in my book is that when I was governor first, and then Barack won in 2004, I was asked to make a phone call on behalf of Michelle Obama, because as soon as he won the Senate race, she wanted a job either at Northwestern University or the University of Chicago hospitals for $200,000 to $300,000 a year, the wife of the new senator. And I was asked, would you call? And
Was she specific about how much she wanted?
yeah. And
She was specific about salary?
Yeah. And I think Northwestern, we should double check this, but my recollection is good. I think Northwestern was willing to pay $200,000 to hire her. This is the wife of the new U.S. senator and federal money for, Medicaid and Medicare, things like that. And then they got a better offer at the University of Chicago, which is in Hyde Park, where they're from, $300,000, and she ended up working there. And I'd called to help because you help people in politics, and the guy's wife wants a job. I'll make a phone call. He didn't get it. She didn't get it because of me. But it didn't hurt to have the governor call and say,
The second Obama gets elected, Michelle says, I want a job at one of two hospitals for between $200,000 and $300,000.
That's correct. Yeah. And she ended up working at the University of Chicago Hospital. I'm almost certain $300,000 a year. And so Resco was really helpful to Obama. And so when the investigations against me heated up, it had to do with fundraising, and Tony was part of that. And I got to say this, Tony suffered. He spent 8 years in prison. I don't know whether those things that they said he did were even legal. Based on what they did to me, I'm not so sure they were illegal. It had nothing to do with my administration. They were business matters. But Obama just ran from him, did nothing to help him, and pretends like he never knew him. And yet the moment he became senator, she gets that $300,000 a year job with a little help, tiny little bit of help from me with a phone call. And then they buy this mansion in the Kenwood neighborhood, which is Hyde Park, Chicago. Beautiful old mansions where the family of Leopold and Loeb, they lived, right?
So a lot of sickos in that neighborhood going back 100 years.
Well, those two boys were.
Yeah, they were.
Right. I mean, it's a bastion of, liberal America there.
Dickie Loeb.
So what happened was the Obamas bought this mansion. Now he's the new senator. The first thing they do is buy a mansion. I guess he felt like I was getting a mansion because I was the governor. It wasn't mine, but I got the use of a 50,000 square foot governor's mansion. I guess they wanted their own. So they could only afford $750,000. So they purchased the lot with the house on it, the mansion on it, but they couldn't afford the adjoining lot. So they asked Resco to buy it for them. And he did. And my understanding of the federal investigations with me were also connected to Obama, that these guys were apparently looking into that and some other things. Along the way, the dynamic changed, and Obama started moving up in the presidential race. And here again, it's something I'd like to take back, but I was the first governor in America to endorse him for president. We had personal relationships from Illinois, and he was running against Hillary, so it wasn't hard.
Yeah.
But what ultimately happened was, when he started rising, Axelrod, David, who used to work for me and then went on to Obama, I knew what they were doing. They were, for political reasons, they were, influencing the media to pretty much Tony me up more than Obama. I was more Tonyed up. And Tony was a supporter and a friend, and he was, and I liked Tony in spite of everything that's happened to him. But Obama knew him and loved him longer. And Tony had done more for Obama over the years than he did for me. And ultimately, politically and in the media just conveniently ignored Resco's relationship to Obama. They would give it very little coverage. And it was all about me and Tony.
So Axelrod worked for you.
He did when I was a congressman, when I ran for Congress.
What's he like?
Oh, he's very smart. You know, I like him a lot. His son was an intern for me. His son, Michael, he's a great kid. He's grown up now. No, I like David a lot, but he's a very practical guy, and he's very ambitious politically. And, you know, it's a rough and tumble business. And, you know, when his interests collide with yours, you know.
His one out.
He will exercise what's in his interests. Yeah. And I think a lot of the political consultants are that way. He denies saying this, but he did. When Kerry had been beaten by Bush in 2004, and the Democrats all felt like Kerry was going to win. In fact, Kerry was getting some massage in Boston that night, election night, and what's the guy's name? He used to write great speeches for Ted Kennedy.
Bob Shrum.
Shrum walked in and told him something like, I'd hear this stuff from the Democrat world, you know. Let me be the first one to congratulate you, Mr. President, right? Remember that? And then the next morning it was finally concluded that Bush won Ohio, right?
I knew them all very well. And Shrum, you know, had good qualities. He was smart, but what a toady, what a professional fillator of politicians. It's just really disgusting.
So that was a Tuesday, right? And of course, Wednesday I get a phone call at about 6 p.m. I'm at home. The election's over. David Axelrod. Now, he denies this, but it happened. And he said, you know, the Democrats, Hillary's the front runner in 2008, but too liberal, too disliked. Kerry should have won. He couldn't. We're looking for a new face. Somebody from the heartland of America. That's what he called it. You need to have an open mind about thinking about running for president and challenging Hillary in 2008. Now, at that time, he had Obama. Obama was his candidate for the Senate. He had been his consultant. Obama won, and he had that great speech. And, you know, but I think David wasn't quite sure that maybe America was ready to elect a black person. So he's in the business of being a consultant. Wanted to make sure he has a horse in the race because the Clintons already have their people. He had Edwards in 2004. And
didn't go well, yeah.
Yeah. So he's looking for candidates for president. So Vilsack, remember that name?
Very well.
Me in Illinois, and Obama, the three of us. And he was probably positioning himself to see which one of us might have the better chance. And he picked the right horse eventually because Obama was the right one. And of course, Obama's success and my calamity parallel, right? And so you ask me, this is a long answer to your question about 55 minutes ago. What did Obama have to do with my problems? Was election night, we're there, and a labor boss by the name of Tom Balinoff, Service Employees Union, big supporter of both of us, came up to me. This Grant Park in Chicago, beautiful weather, magical, historic night. And he said, Barack called me last night. He wanted me to talk to you about Valerie Jarrett. He'd like her, very close friend of Michelle Obama, by the way. He'd like you to appoint her to the United States Senate because the governor has to appoint the senator. And he wanted me to ask you what you would want. Can I call you and come and see you and make an appointment? I said, of course, call me tomorrow. We'll set something up this week. That's how it started. And then the next day, I got done running. I went out and ran like 8 miles that day, 7 miles. I'm just loosening up. I'm laying on my little family room floor, stretching. I'm on my back and I'm talking to one of my aides. And I said, Balinoff called. Apparently Obama sent him to me. Obama sent him to me. He wants to make a deal on the Senate seat. What should we do? What should we think about getting? Legal stuff, not, give me cash or anything, which would be illegal. Political horse trading, which eventually is what the Supreme Court, the appellate court said it was. And then I say, and, unless I do something, significant, this will be in my obituary. I said, so-and-so had suggested that we just kiss his ass and give him whoever he wants. But that seems like that would be political malpractice. And we have a golden opportunity. We have a real opportunity here to, do something meaningful. And then I said, I know, this is effing golden. I'm not giving enough for nothing, right? I'm known for that. And
you didn't realize this was being taped.
I didn't realize it, but let me say something to your listeners. When you're in Chicago politics and the ethics in that place and the way they do business and the way the feds not wrongly necessarily try to set people up to see whether or not they'll take a temptation. They send people in to offer you cash and stuff like that. You'd be an idiot if you don't think they may be listening. I'd been under federal investigations for 5 years. I knew it because of the Resco stuff and some other stuff, people who were supporters of mine and Obama. I thought it's all very possible. And everything I'm talking about doing is legal. And I was super careful because I was under such intense federal investigation at that time to make sure that anything I talked about doing, I checked with my governor's lawyer and lawyers. And my lawyer was on average on all these FBI tapes. They taped my calls To this day, 98% of those tapes are covered up under a court seal. The judge would not allow us to talk about how my lawyer was on those calls 3 times a day, because at that point, now you know they're coming. You want to be absolutely careful that whatever you do on this Senate seat is legal, right?
Yeah.
And so you're throwing out all kinds of ideas because you do have this effing golden opportunity. We talked about Oprah for a couple of days, all these crazy ideas. And everybody wanted it. Everybody wanted me to appoint them, as you can imagine. And, and through third parties, they're suggesting deals that were political. They weren't illegal. Some had suggested money and campaign funds, which would have been illegal. And but I would talk to my lawyer, 3 times a day, and he was advising me. In fact, one call, I say something like, we're discussing a creative way to create a nonprofit political action committee to help support the advancement of access to health care, which was a big issue for me when I was governor. And Obama was talking about doing Obamacare and all this at the federal level. And some of the people that had put our health care plans together in Illinois went on to work for Obama. And so the question was whether or not there was something that we could do to be helpful to push it further in Illinois and do something. And could we put together a 501c3 or 501c4? Obama gets some of these big, rich Democrats who give money to him to put it in our thing. And can we, perhaps make the deal on the Senate seat for something like this? And so I say to the lawyer and to one of my aides, I say, how do you do a deal like that? It's got to be legal, obviously. I'm on the tape saying that. A couple of years go by, I'm at my second trial because they failed to convict me on their corrupt charges the first trial. And they're going to play that tape against me. And I'm actually charged. One of the crimes, it was that phone call. How do you do a deal like that? It's got to be legal, obviously. I'm asking. I don't even know if you could do it. I'm just thinking out loud. And they criminalized it. But surely I'm going to get acquitted on this. But the jury instruction was custom tailored to fit these conversations, to tell the jury that those things were criminal. And they can convict anybody if they do that. If they decide, for example, that this conversation you and I are having, and they charge us, and then they got to prove it before a jury, and they got a judge that's willing to do anything they want them to do, all they got to do is just write up a jury instruction, 12 laymen, average, everyday, ordinary people who aren't lawyers, aren't in politics, just tell them this is against the law. And they'll make the right decision. They'll convict you of this conversation because they're told by the judge and the prosecutors it's against the law.
So big picture, why do you think they did this to you? The Democratic establishment did this to you?
Well, they were Bush prosecutors that started it. Here's what I think happened. So
Fitzgerald.
That's right. That guy's so dirty and rotten and corrupt.
I've noticed.
Yeah. Here's what happened. They came at 6 o'clock in the morning and arrested a sitting governor. I was Roger Stone, years before Roger Stone, right? My little girls are sleeping ready, going to get up shortly for school. My little one at the time was 5. And she was in bed with us. And I got up at 6. I was going to actually go run that. It was winter. I was going to go run. I had my running clothes laid out. Phone rang. And I thought it was a friend of mine. The guy says, we have a warrant for your arrest. And the agent so-and-so. And I had state police security all the time as the governor. And I thought it was a friend of mine. I say this a lot because he's like that way. And I really did. I said, come on, State Senator Jimmy DeLeo. And I said, come on, Jimmy, stop effing around. 6 o'clock in the morning. But it wasn't him. It was really the FBI with a warrant. I think they got me, handcuffed me, drove me to their facility. By 4 hours later, by 10 o'clock, they were a good cop. And they had me in, and you're not a bad guy. We listened to all your tapes. You're just a product of Chicago politics. They wanted me to cooperate. I believed, my interpretation was, they wanted me to talk about Obama. I don't think they were ever going to go after Obama at that point, first black president. But I think they wanted to see whether or not I would, here's a prison term, snitch on the president-elect and then go back to him and say that. They probably told him that anyway because they lie. In any event, I said, I was never involved in any wrongdoing with him. I don't know whether he's involved in anything of that sort. I can tell you I'm not. And I got nothing to talk about it. Whatever I discussed was politics. And then they changed their attitude. They shipped me to another facility, the court building, and put me in a small little cell. And they had me next to this really angry guy all caught up on PCP, screaming and MF, and he had no clue that he was right next to the governor. I'm doing push-ups in there because I'm thinking, this is really good. This is really a bad day, and this is going to be really bad. But maybe at some point I want to be able to say that while I was in the heat of the moment, I still was strong enough to do some push-ups in my cell. So I did push-ups in there. So I can say that I did it, right? And,
plus, if you're going to join a gang, you need to be buff.
Yeah, there's some truth to that, yeah. Anyway, so I think, and then they went to Obama the next day, and they interviewed him. They call them 302s, FBI 302s. Every criminal defendant is entitled under the Constitution to have evidence that could exonerate him or her. And Obama's 302s are directly relevant to my case. To this day, they won't give it to us, what Obama said. And he publicly contradicted what the labor boss, Balanoff, had said, that he had come to me the night before, because it all started that way. And Balanoff had testified under oath twice in 2 trials that he said that Obama had called him and they sent him over to me. And, it was about talking about a political deal. And Obama publicly said no. What he said in those FBI 302s might contradict that. I don't know. If you lie to the FBI, it's a crime. So I think what happened was, because it's unusual, and you know this, the new president doesn't keep the U.S. attorney from the previous president, especially if it's the other party.
Of course.
But suddenly now they made a deal with Obama. We'll leave you alone. You keep us here until we get him. And it wasn't until they got me at the second trial years later that they all went into private practice and became partners at big firms making millions of dollars. One of them became a judge, but Fitzgerald's a partner in a big law firm. The lead prosecutor, partner in a big law firm. And the moment that they got their convictions against me in the second trial, that's where they went. And I think the reason Obama did nothing to be helpful while I'm in there, and after being in prison for, 6.5 years, I was unusual. Unlike the 151,000 federal inmates, I was probably the only guy who was able to get, this is the vernacular prison, my paperwork in front of 2 presidents. Axelrod was getting my request for a commutation from Obama on Obama's desk. He gave him letters from, my 2 daughters, my young daughters, to the president. Obama's daughters are the same age as mine. And I'd done already 6.5 years asking for clemency. And we recognized the politics of him and, his image, and walking out of the White House on January 20th, 2017. So we're not even going to have it be where someone might have the screenshot of him leaving the White House and me leaving the big house at the same time, because we were connected to the case. But why don't you just cut my sentence in half from 14 years? I never took a penny. It was requests for campaign contributions and a political deal you wanted to make, right? Just cut my sentence from 14 years to 7, which would be higher than anybody governor's ever gotten from Illinois who's been in prison, probably maybe the longest actual time served of any governor. And I'll limp out of prison in October of 2017. And it sure looked promising in the days leading up to that, because a few days before that, he had released from prison a member of the FALN, the Puerto Rican terrorist group that was blowing up federal buildings.
So you should have been a Puerto Rican terrorist.
This guy got released by Obama a few days before. And I'm thinking, ooh, that's a good sign for me, right? Yeah. And then a guy got 35 years in prison for treason against the United States. His name was Bradley Manning. He went into prison as Bradley Manning. Came out of prison, Chelsea Manning, through the largesse of the taxpayers. Obama cut her loose after 6 years or 7 years. I'm thinking, I'm easy compared to these 2. And I had members of Congress, Democrats who I'd served with, Axelrod, asking him to do it. And he didn't do it. And I think it's because he made a deal with them. They were basically said, we'll leave you alone. You don't interrupt, get involved in any of this. And you don't help him. That's what I think. But here's what's interesting. And it shows a lot about the kind of person Trump is. And all through this process, these long, hard years and the years of, dashed hopes and expectations, because there was no way we could lose our appeal. These things are legal. Then you figure, then they reverse the Senate seat after I'm in prison for 3.5 years and vacate my sentence. Now I have no sentence. So I went from 14 years to no years for a year, which was easier time to do, because when you're looking, you walk into prison in March of 2012, March 15th, and your exit day is May 2024, right? That's a long, hard road. So you try to break up, psychologically, you try to break up that time, right? So you say, okay, let's get from here to the appeal. We're going to have hopes that we can win that, though deep down you just know. You've seen enough of the system to know you're dead, right? But you cling to that hope. They can't uphold the Senate seat. They reverse it. Now I have no sentence. I discussed with my attorney, when do we go back to resentencing? They got to give you a sentence. You go back to the same judge. Let's just wait a year. I'll just stay here. I'll keep, working out, reading, and just trying to grow. And then we'll go back to this judge when I will have served almost 5 years, more than just about anybody. I mean, nobody in American history other than me has served a single day in prison for a fundraising violation. And this wasn't even a violation, but let's assume the worst that it was. No one did a single day And my lawyer presented this to the judge. There's not a single case. And letters, my little girls had grown up. They gave beautiful presentations in court. I'm on video from Colorado in prison for the resentencing. August 9th, 2016. Okay? So I go from no sentence. The centerpiece of the case was a big lie to begin with. It was never a crime. No sale of the Senate seat. No sentence. Back before the judge. I've been a well-behaved inmate. We submit well over 100 letters from my colleagues, guys that I helped. Good guys. I'm criminals, but I learned a lot of these guys aren't bad guys. Some are really bad. Some are pretty good guys. They're just, have gone the wrong way and got bad habits. We submit the letters, and there's real expectation that I'll go home. He puts me back at 14 years. And I hear my older daughter sobbing in the courtroom after they gave these beautiful presentations. I'm watching my little girls who've grown, and I'm so proud of them. And look how sweet and nice and smart they are. And boy, Patty did a great job raising them. All these things I'm thinking at this resentencing. But here's where God comes in, and this whole miracle of how I eventually got home, and that Donald Trump would be the instrument. See, this is part of what I read about in my book. I got to know him a little bit on Celebrity Apprentice, a show I never watched. But after they took everything away from me and I had no income and I was an honest governor, didn't get rich in the business, I was getting these opportunities to do these, in one place that you can actually make a living when you got this leprosy is an entertainment.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
No one wants to come near you when you got it, understandably.
But you're better than Diddy, so you can still get paid. Yeah.
So yeah, I turned down a bunch of really bad stuff, like being a greeter on an HBO show called The Bunny Ranch. It's a whorehouse in Henderson, Nevada. They offered me 6 figures. They thought I was perfect for the role because I was such a scoundrel in the media, right? I turned it down. The guy's name was Dennis Hoff.
I know him well. Yeah.
Yeah, nice guy.
Yeah, he was.
But I couldn't. I got 2 little girls. I'm not doing that. Anyway, but Trump's show came calling because he saw me on television fighting back. And so I did Celebrity Apprentice. This is October 2009 that we tape it. It airs in like March 2010. My first trial is June 2010. And he was so good to me. He was so sympathetic. He was so kind. People don't realize on a personal level, Trump's a kind-hearted person, very different from most politicians, and the direct opposite of a cold, selfish, completely practical Obama, right? So when Obama passes me by, back to the resentencing on the 9th of August, the judge puts me back at 14 years. My daughter's sobbing in the courtroom. I can't see her, but I hear it. Hope is gone now, right? But here's how God works. He sends me more hope because that afternoon, Trump's giving a speech in North Carolina. He's running against Hillary. And he starts talking about crooked Hillary, right? And before the audience starts chanting, lock her up, he says. And then there's this governor from Illinois. Blah, blah, blah. They just gave him 14 years. Again, 14 years. He's a choir boy next to Hillary, something like that. Trump's got me on his radar, right? And I'm thinking, because I know politics, I think he's going to beat her. Even from afar in prison, I felt he was going to beat her because he was different. And he was standing up to stuff he wasn't backing down like typical politicians do. And I thought, wow. So if Obama doesn't do it, who knows? And he was so good to me on that show. Well, he didn't do it, Obama, the 20th of January. 1 month later, Trump's been president for 1 month. I get called into the case manager's office, and they have a form I have to sign. It's a waiver. I have to, if I agree to allow the White House Pardon Office to get my prison records. Of course, what do I sign, right? So I signed it. 2 things. Trump's looking out and wants to see whether or not, I was a well-behaved inmate. There's a way perhaps where he can send me home. And Obama was never going to do it because they never asked for my records. And what that did for me was it gave me hope for the next couple of years. And then after the Supreme Court didn't take our case, God bless you, my friend, me and my homies in prison are watching my wife on your show on a Monday in the spring of 2018. The Supreme Court turned me down that weekend. That Monday evening, you had Patty, my wife Patty, on.
Yeah, I'll never forget it.
Yeah, and you were fantastic, and I'm really grateful to you for giving me this.
Gosh, well, there's nothing more beautiful than a loyal spouse.
Yeah, she's amazing, isn't she?
Yeah, I agree with that strongly. So when you see, going through everything that you did, when you see the FBI raid Mar-a-Lago in the summer of 2022, what do you think?
Deja vu all over again.
Yeah.
These lying scumbags. Yeah, weaponized. They're politicians. They're political agents. KGB, Soviet-style police state politics in America, and the Democrats have embraced it. The Bush administration started it, but this Fitzgerald is his own guy. And Comey and Fitzgerald are real close.
Of course they are.
And there's no doubt in my mind that what they did to me at the AAA level to a Democrat governor, they said, ooh, we can get away with this. Let's do it to Trump, a Republican president at the major league level. And that's exactly what this whole Russian collusion bullshit was all about. And I'm watching this from prison, and I know all of it. I recognize it. I know the tactics. I know what the stuff they say to the media, how they leak stuff and how they lie. They're political operatives. Our country is on the crossroads, on the threshold. I mean, it's so important to elect Trump for 1,000 reasons. This might be the most important one of them. Because if we lose this, the ability in America to elect our leaders without the intervention of prosecutors, criminalizing things that aren't crimes for politics, the voters don't have any choices. Free and fair elections don't matter. It's all rigged, like they do in like the old Soviet Union. What did Beria say? Show me the man, I'll show you the crime.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When we started this show, we were looking for a very specific sponsor. We wanted to find a company that could send us good meat. Better than anything you could buy in a grocery store that didn't have a lot of weird hormones in it or chemicals, just good meat from the United States. And we found one, and we are proud to partner with them. They're called Merriweather Farms, and they produce all-natural beef, and we are proud to be in business with them. We eat it. Our viewers have been buying it and loving it. We've got all kinds of positive reviews. Again, this is a sponsor we're proud to have. So Merriweather Farms is out with a new product. In addition to the steaks that we have almost every night here and the burgers all shipped directly to your house, they have a new line of snacks, including single-serve beef sticks, one of which is right here on the table. Unlike store-bought alternatives, which you can buy at convenience stores, these are made in the United States in Wyoming at their facility, and they're free of nitrates, MSG, mystery meat, and other weird stuff you don't want in your mouth. Like all the products that Merriweather Farms makes, they are made fresh. They've got simple ingredients, all of which you can pronounce and recognize, and they're delicious and good for you. If you use our special promo code TCN24 at checkout, they're about $1.50 a piece. It's a perfect on-the-go protein boost if you need one, or if you've got kids or sports, want something to keep in your car or truck. Super easy and good for you. Check out Merriweather Farms today. You will taste the difference. It's, again, better than anything you can buy at the grocery store, and it comes right to your house.
So, I mean, we have a media protected, first line item in the Bill of Rights, as you know, in order to push back against the abuse of power by the government.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't seem to be playing that role. Their assigned role. They're the role that duty would compel them to play.
Mm-hmm.
They seem to be like covering for the people in power.
Oh man, duty would compel them to play.
Yeah.
The fourth estate, a free press and a free society. You don't have that to check power.
Yeah.
We're dead, right? So that's kind of what I naively thought when I'm sitting in the back seat of the FBI vehicle, handcuffed behind my hands. I'm the governor of Illinois. It's the fifth largest state in America, right? Now they got me. And I said, well, what's this about? And the guy said, the sale of the Senate seat. I said, what? First of all, you got to be a horse's ass to think that you can get away with something like that. I'm going to sell Obama, any presidents, but Obama at that time, he was a demigod elevated by the media. Okay, all superficial bullshit about how great he is. But I'm going to be that stupid where I'm going to actually try to sell his Senate seat. And I'm already under intense federal investigation for Bresco and some of these other guys. And, the activists in politics and stuff, and they're trying to find crimes. They can't find them for 5 years. So now this, I'm thinking the media, and not so great, but the media is certainly going to laugh them out of court before they get into court. Who'd be so stupid to do something like that? And the reality was they were all over it because it was just too super sensational to pass up. It sold newspapers. It was good for ratings. So they're more interested in the storyline than in the truth, abrogating their responsibility to all of us as citizens to keep an eye on the power. And the government has no power. These federal prosecutors have all the power, unchecked power, not foreseen by our founding fathers when they divided our government. They didn't know that there'd be a branch out of the executive part of the government, an agency out of the executive branch that would grow like a cancer there. Originally going after the Al Capones of the world,
right,
and now taking that power to all kinds of levels to turn it into a political
And
level.
it becomes a secret police.
There you go. Yeah. This is why the work that you do, Tucker, and I mean, you're so nice to me, but I'm grateful to you for what you do and others like you who are fighting for, freedom, and Elon Musk and these guys.
Which is so corrupt. I mean, and I think it's important to say out loud what it is, which again is corrupt and evil.
Corrupt and evil, yeah.
So does Trump have in a fair election, do you think Trump will win?
Oh, yeah. If fair election, he wins every one of those battleground states with some cushion.
Yeah.
It's another thing I want to say to your listeners. They should listen to me on this sort of stuff. In a fair election, one thing I've been good at in life is winning elections. I run 14 of them. 7 or 8 were really hard. Primaries really hard against other Democrats. running against Republicans for governor in Illinois, being the first Democrat to win after 26 years. Those are really competitive races. So I'm giving me high marks. I'm an expert witness when it comes to politics, understanding the mood of the voters, sensing them, not just what the polling says. Actually, It's more instinctive, what you saw at Madison Square Garden when you gave that great speech. I saw the crowds there. They're not Nazis. You know what they are? They're white people and they're black people.
Exactly.
They're Hispanics and they're Asian. They're old and they're young. They're good, decent, hardworking, forgotten Americans.
Yes.
And there's more of them that aren't, and they've learned to know what's being done to them and how our country is setting the priorities that go against their interests now so blatantly for those who don't legally come to the United States. They're not stupid. And I believe if this election is run fairly, it's going to be a 2024 version of 1980, when the country made this choice between Reagan and Carter by the first or second weekend of October and started shifting and going towards Reagan, ended up winning, maybe 49 states or something. That won't happen now because the demographic in America is different. The ball games, those battleground states. But if I'm right about this, Trump will sweep all of them and might be competitive in states like Virginia, maybe, or Minnesota even. Keep an eye on that. We'll see. But I'm very hopeful. And as Reagan used to say, cautiously optimistic.
Well, it does seem, I'd bet my house on the proposition that Trump is more popular than Kamala Harris, and more people in those 7 states will vote for Trump than Kamala Harris. But that doesn't mean that he's going to be president. What do you think will actually happen?
Well, that's a good question. I couldn't imagine what happened in 2020, and you can't really talk about it, but I have tremendous skepticism about all of that. I was asked after that election about,
Well, you literally can't talk about it. And if we talk about that, this will be taken off YouTube.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Why do you, if somebody says, we can talk about anything you want except this one thing.
Yeah.
What does that tell you?
Well, you look at those FBI tapes. I want to play 98% of them, right? They're on. Yeah. They wouldn't let me play them in court even to prove my innocence.
So
right?
If you're hiding something, there's a reason, right?
They're the ones that are lying.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, they're the ones who did it. But I think that I think that so much. I think there's such a movement for Trump right now. I think there's such a movement against what's happening, and I think the testicular virility, that great courage Trump showed at that moment when he got shot.
Yes,
Butler elevated him to a very different place. He's no longer your typical politician.
Right.
I think he represents something that's really powerful, and you can just see all the things that are unfolding. And here's another reason why I feel very good about this election. The public polls, whatever they are, I never relied on those. We had our polling, and it guided how we ran the race and what the strategy was to run and win. And you know that the other side has their polling too, and in all likelihood, it's probably as good as yours. So they know what you know. They're seeing what you're seeing. And so if you really want to know how the campaigns are going, just watch the candidates, where they go, what they say, what they do, and what they're running on. And Trump's running on a message on things that he wants to do for the American people. You might disagree with those things, but this is what he's saying he's going to do. It's about you, the people. What's she saying? He's a Nazi? Now they're in the late stages and making these outrageous accusations and calling people names. Whenever that would happen to me, they weren't calling me a Nazi, but you get nasty stuff thrown at you. When you're ahead, you love it because you know you're winning.
Yeah.
Right? So he's winning. And if it's fair and honest, he'll win comfortably in those 7 states.
So if they come to us the day after the election, and by they I mean Morning Joe and the rest of the sycophants in the media, and tell us that Kamala Harris turns out to be just incredibly popular, and her compelling vision got her across the finish line with a massive margin, and she got 84 million votes, and she's the winner, and if you disagree, you're a criminal. Will people accept that? I will say I will not accept that, but will others accept that? Like, what happens then?
In Nazi Germany, they held a plebiscite. Hitler wanted to confirm some of what he was doing, and it was like 99% yeah. That's how you say yes in Germany, right? I think that's the only way they could even remotely have.
But shouldn't look? I don't want to be an election denier or denier of anything that's true. I always want to acknowledge what's true. Period.
That's right.
But I also don't think that any of us are under the obligation to accept them at face value, at their word. I think they've kind of tried the limits of good faith. And aren't we allowed to say, look, you say Kamala Harris won? Great. Show us the books.
No doubt about it. Well, we know them to be liars. They've been lying through the years, and they've just recently been lying about, well, what? The cognitive capabilities of the president, and then they throw him out of office and, hijack him from office and put her there, and, lying about her record. She didn't work at McDonald's even. They lie about everything, right? No, we can't believe that. That's going to be really hard to believe.
Why do we have electronic voting machines? I thought the idea, I was never against them. I never thought about it, but I assumed that they were more efficient, that you got the results faster, and that they were more accurate. And they're not more accurate than hand counting paper ballots, and they're certainly not faster. The results in countries that don't have electronic voting machines are reliable, and they're in long before our results are. So what is the reason that we have electronic voting machines?
So among the different people I write about in my book is Walter Hill, a black guy from East St. Louis, Illinois.
Yes.
And when I first got to prison, he embraced me. He was, you my governor, right? And he told me about a time that we had met. He had lost some weight, but he had been a big guy. And when he told me about having met him once down in the Metro East area of Illinois, down southwestern Illinois, in East St. Louis, I kind of remembered him. And he was like some liquor license commissioner. Now, I don't think he'd mind me saying this. He was a colorful figure and a good guy. But he was wrong what he did.
I like him already.
Yeah. But he said to me, and he was sympathetic to me because he's in politics. Couldn't believe I'm in prison for what? But he said to me, I voted for you 2 times, right? In East St. Louis. And I said, oh, wow, thanks. How many times you vote for Obama? 9? I said, you're a racist, man. We're both Democrats. You vote for the black guy 9 times, me only 2? Right. That's why.
I don't remember Obama running for president 9 times. How did Mr. Hill pull that off?
No, then that first election. Because this was
the first election.
Yeah, I met him in 2012 before the re-election. So this would have been the 2008 election. And I frankly believe he was telling me the truth. But that's the answer to your question about those machines. What gives me hope too about this election is among the ways Democratic precinct workers, and Obama and I know this, we were high up, but you kind of know these activists are doing whatever they're doing in the polling places that are controlled by Democrats, largely in the inner city, in the poor neighborhoods. Is through what's called the absentee ballots. And they gather them up and harvest them. And what happened in 2020 was that on steroids with the COVID situation and the mail-in ballots. And that's among the reasons why I have I believe an honest skepticism about the result of that. Don't know that Trump even had a fair chance to get in the court on any of that stuff. And again, I know from my experience how the courts can, be dishonest. There's got to be so many reforms that have to happen, God willing Trump wins, to clean up that justice system. And I think there has to be, nobody should be unchecked. I think that's the lesson from my hard experience. Human nature, even good people can get tempted to do the bad things and wrong things. Another reason why, thank you scientists for your great intelligence and the great contributions you make. But unless we guide you through conscience, which comes from God, right? You're going to destroy the world. So answer your question, I think the voting system is the way it is today because of political priorities that are above and beyond what's fundamentally right for our country. And what really makes me angry at my party is nothing sacred to these people anymore, that they would weaponize the law and the justice system to destroy Trump, because they know that if they destroy Trump, nothing's going to stop them from destroying our freedoms. And little by little, this I know too, having lost mine, I see the steady erosion of freedom in America. And it's so much like countries that, like my father came from after World War II, Serbia. He didn't want to live in a communist country. And, they know how those rights and freedoms are taken away. And here's this, what Lincoln called the last best hope on earth. If we lose freedom here, you forget about it all over the world. I think we're going to start seeing the beginning of a new dark age where tyrants and totalitarian governments are the rule,